Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. The Democrat way of thinking. Anyone who disagrees with me is a Russian agent or a racist. Any policy I disagree with is fascism. Any decision that the Supreme Court makes that I don't agree with is unconstitutional. This leftist lunacy is something else, huh? It's not even divisive partisan rhetoric, it's just the truth. You leftoids are a bunch of whiny little babies. We gotta talk about that concept, featuring none other than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her incoherent temper tantrum ramblings over recent statements made by Justice Clarence Thomas, the one and only, the man of the hour, an American superhero and icon. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's the clip that's bouncing all over Twitter. Let's just play it in its entirety and then discuss the ideas.
I'm going to talk more broadly about the court in a minute, but first I want to ask about another decision this past week, striking down affirmative action programs. The two black justices on the court, Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, had a really blistering debate that we don't usually see in decisions. Here is part of what Justice Thomas wrote. He said, quote, Justice Jackson uses her broad observations about statistical relationships between race and select measures of health, wealth, and well-being to label all blacks as victims. Her desire to do so is unfathomable to me. It is an insult to individual achievement and cancerous to young minds seeking to push through barriers. Their race is not to blame for everything, good or bad, that happens in their lives. What is your response to that?
I mean, what Justice Clarence Thomas wrote there, I believe, is profoundly disrespectful. I just think it was profoundly disrespectful to his colleague. It includes sweeping assumptions about her worldview, whereas when you look at what the response was from Justice Ketanji Brown, we saw that her dissent was grounded in fact. It was grounded in the facts of the case. It did not disparage Clarence Thomas's overall worldview, but as a matter of fact, a nuanced critique of his analysis of the facts of the case. But for him to come out and insinuate that her opinion is due to some sort of inferior or less than really thought out of a stance, I think it's profoundly insulting. And I think that he really demonstrated his character, frankly, and his worldview in that critique himself.
Now, I know I just said before I played that clip, let's discuss the ideas, but I run into a little bit of an issue there because I'm honestly not exactly sure what the hell AOC was even talking about. You know, you can tell when somebody doesn't have a point, when they're just kind of making it up as they go. You know, listening to such incoherent rambling reminds me of listening to a know-it-all 13-year-old stuck in a corner just refusing to admit that they don't know what the hell they're talking about, but just digging those heels in and going deeper and deeper, rambling on a bunch of know-nothing nonsense. AOC has completely lost the plot, because the simple fact here is there's nothing to argue against. Clarence Thomas hit the nail on the head. AOC claims that what Clarence Thomas said was profoundly disrespectful, but she has it backwards as usual. You know what's deeply and profoundly disrespectful? Ketanji Brown Jackson's public statements. She's supposed to be an impartial justice, making decisions purely based on the Constitution, but instead she's acting like every other Democrat. She's acting like an activist in her position. Not to mention how irresponsible it is for her to be promoting her personal opinions publicly, more so than any justice in history. Here's a chart of her public statements since assuming her role as a Supreme Court justice. Words spoken by each justice in their first 8 arguments. Ketanji Brown Jackson has 11,000 words spoken. In other words, she's inserting her personal opinion and activist rhetoric into her job as an impartial Supreme Court justice. It's totally shameful. AOC argued multiple times that actually Ketanji Brown Jackson is simply speaking with facts and statistics. She said said that multiple times without actually providing any evidence as to why Ketanji Brown Jackson's argument is correct. What it really boils down to is exactly what Justice Clarence Thomas stated, that she's looking at the broad statistics based on race and then making sweeping broad generalizations about particular groups of people, and of course using this woke way of thinking as a justification for literal racial discrimination. That is the core point here. Three left-leaning, activist Democrat Supreme Court justices are arguing that racism and discrimination is justified because of broad unequal outcomes for certain communities. It's all complete nonsense. And that's why AOC can't put together a coherent argument. Instead, it's just Ketanji Brown Jackson has the facts. Yeah, that's not an argument. The second argument is that the Supreme Court has been hijacked by Republican extremists who've gone rogue. But this argument falls short as well, considering what we're actually seeing are proper constitutional decisions, and most importantly, in a way, democracy in action. The claim is that the Supreme Court has gone rogue and isn't representing the people, isn't representing the right thing or the Constitution, but is simply doing Donald Trump's bidding. Even though the Supreme Court multiple times has ruled against Donald Trump, especially related to 2020 issues. But anyways, the reality is, the left was just dealt another blow as the majority of Americans approve of the SCOTUS affirmative action decision. In other words, it seems as though the popular view, by a significant margin, 20% more people approve of the SCOTUS decision than disapprove. It seems as though the SCOTUS decision isn't so far off from the popular view. It's not a rogue Supreme Court that's doing what it wants. It's a Constitution-abiding, common-sense Supreme Court. That's what Democrats hate. What they want are a bunch of Ketanji Brown Jacksons stacked on the court to make decisions that they agree with politically, to make left-wing political revolution decisions, changing the country in their minority image, because to them, that's democracy in action. It's a complete farce. And it goes even further. Of course, these left-wing lunatics, with AOC leading the charge, are taking their rhetoric to the extreme. Occupy Democrats tweets, breaking. Not exactly sure why this is breaking, but anyways, Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez drops a bombshell. Again, a breaking bombshell? This is, and you'll see later why those words are ridiculous. A breaking bombshell demands that Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts be subpoenaed and that Congress take a long, hard look at impeaching Justice Clarence Thomas. The Supreme Court made a decision that I don't agree with, so we should subpoena and impeach them. See what I mean when I was saying in the intro that they're just a bunch of big babies throwing temper tantrums when they don't get what they want? The Supreme Court made a decision to end racial discrimination within college admissions, a decision that the American people support and agree with, a decision that was totally in line with the Constitution, and the leftist reaction is impeach and subpoena them, and stack the court, of course. And that apparently is a breaking bombshell. I mean, I have no words for this level of stupidity. And speaking of stupidity, let's go into what some of these Democrats at the White House are saying. Biden's Education Secretary Miguel Cardona said, "Today, the Supreme Court substituted itself for Congress."
Today, the court substituted itself for Congress.
What is this guy even going on about? The Supreme Court substituted itself for Congress. Interesting. The implication being that Congress passed student loan bailouts and the Supreme Court stepped in and substituted Congress, blocking the decision? No, that never happened. In fact, Congress explicitly rejected Biden's student loan bailout because that executive order decision did in fact substitute Congress, seek to subvert Congress's authority on the issue of debt and debt relief. Then here's Joe Biden saying this.
I believe the court's decision to strike down my student debt relief program was a mistake, was wrong.
He believes that the court's decision was a mistake and wrong. Also this.
President Biden, the Congressional Black Caucus said the Supreme Court has thrown into question its own legitimacy. Is this a rogue court?
This is not a normal court.
That the Supreme Court is not a normal court. I don't know, seems like a normal court to me. But these leftoids, they don't get what they want. Well, the problem isn't them and their minority view. No, the problem is the court itself. Completely ridiculous. Could you imagine if Donald Trump had said that? What the media coverage would be like. Donald Trump, the wannabe dictator fascist, questions the legitimacy of SCOTUS, attacking the credibility of, yet again, another crucial American institution. Give me a freaking break. Leftoids throwing a big old temper tantrum. Leftoids severely wrong on the actual issue. What's new? Breaking bombshell. AOC is completely freaking clueless. That's what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.